Rain slammed into the canopy so hard it smothered every sound except the radio. A broken voice pushed through the static, tight and low, wrestling panic. Havoc Actual murmured that the team was combat ineffective, trapped against the river, chewing through ammo with no clean exit. Men were jammed shoulder to shoulder along the mud bank, soaked to the bone, fingers trembling as they tried to reload blind. Rounds cracked overhead and shredded bark behind them. Boots skidded in the muck when someone lost balance and barely caught himself. The jungle felt too close now, like it was breathing in sync with the enemy. Someone said it softly, not over comms. The sniper attachment was gone. A beat of silence. Then another voice, almost apologizing, said she didn't make it. No arguments, no prayers out loud. This wasn't hero time. This was the space after hope empties out. Enemy movement crept through the brush. Shapes slid. Metal tapped under the river's black skin. Something shifted without a ripple. The enemy assumed the water was empty. The team assumed they were alone. A seal whispered what nobody wanted to say. "We're done." Before we roll on, this is Old Bill's Tales. Subscribe so you don't miss these stories, and drop a comment telling us where you're listening from. 18 hours earlier, it began in a room that reeked of wet nylon and old coffee. Red light washed the briefing table while a river map sat under clear plastic, pinned by empty mags and a busted pen. SEAL Team 4, call sign Havoc, ringed it with that calm swagger that comes from doing the same job too many times. They were tired but sure of themselves. Shirts rolled, sleeves down, faces half lit. Someone joked about the heat and how the jungle would do the enemy's work. Then she stepped in. Mila Cross, 17, lean and compact, a rifle case in one hand and a small dry bag in the other. No big entrance, no scanning for attention. She took a spot at the edge and listened. Her call sign was Ash, not because it sounded cool, but because it fit. Plain, quiet, accurate. Ash is what's left after fire passes, what settles when everything else is done, a name that didn't beg for a story. She was attached to Havoc as a precision shooter and water-capable scout, the kind who treated the river like a road and could hold her breath longer than most men could hold a thought. To them, though, she was still an attachment. A few guys checked her gear, then her size, then went back to the map like she wasn't in the plan. It wasn't mean, just familiar. A silent wall that said, "You're here, but you're not one of us." One operator, big frame and a soft southern drawl, nodded at her dry bag and grinned. "Hope you brought snacks," he said. A couple laughs followed, easy, not sharp, the kind of laugh that leaves you feeling like a guest who overstayed. Mila didn't react. No forced grin, no comeback. She set her bag down, checked the seal out of habit, and kept her attention on the map. Captain Owen Hale ran the brief, mid-30s, neat haircut, confident delivery. He spoke like someone who trusted clean paperwork more than unpredictable jungle ground. He traced a bend in the river, then slid his finger along a trail cutting inland. "Intel shows light resistance," he said. "Village is asleep. We move fast, hit the structure, take what we came for, and disappear before sunrise." He said it like it was already finished. Mila watched his hand instead of his face, the tapping on the plastic, the way his finger lingered on the route as if the line itself was truth. She waited for the pause, then spoke evenly. "Sir, what's the last confirmed movement in the area? Not the report, actual eyes on." Hale looked at her like he was weighing whether to answer or remind her where she stood. "Overhead saw nothing," he said. "No fires, no movement. Quiet." Mila nodded once, then asked again, same calm tone. Any signs of fuel stored along the river? Anything that could drift downstream? A couple of the guys traded looks. Fuel sounded like the kind of detail only someone overly focused would chase. Hale exhaled through his nose. "We're not here to do environmental science," he said. A light chuckle rolled around the table. Dismissive, not cruel. Mila didn't blink. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, waterproof notebook, pages smudged with pencil and tight handwriting. She didn't show it. She didn't need to. "Roger that," she said, and went quiet. As the others debated timing and breach points, she studied the room. Not paranoid, professional. Who stood close to who cleaned a weapon out of habit, and who did it for show. Who joked because they were relaxed, and who joked because they weren't. When the brief broke, Havoc shifted toward the staging area. Outside, the night air was thick and damp. The river lay close, dark and slow. The jungle wrapped around it like a clenched fist. Mila stopped at the water's edge and stared, not at the surface, but where it met the bank, where fuel, mud, and rot collected. She knelt and dipped 2 fingers in. A faint slick clung to her skin. Not enough to smell, just enough to feel if you were paying attention. She wiped her hand on her pants and scanned the trees. No birds. In a jungle, silence never came without reason. A frog chirped once, then cut off, like something had shifted, like something had listened. Behind her, the team loaded the Zodiac. Rubber creaked. Metal tapped. Someone coughed without trying to hide it. Too loud for a place that was supposed to be asleep. Too loud for a place that was meant to be asleep. Mila checked her gear the way she always did. Once, then again. Not from doubt, but because mistakes don't care how skilled you are. They only notice when you're tired. She tapped the rebreather lines, tested the mouthpiece seal, ran her palm along the rifle case, and counted magazines by feel instead of sight. Then her eyes went back to the water. Captain Owen Hale stepped up, stopping just close enough to carry his voice. "You good?" he asked, the tone already braced for trouble. Mila kept her gaze forward. "I'm good, sir," she said. "But this place doesn't feel empty." Hale followed her line of sight for a second, then shrugged. "It's a jungle," he said. "It always feels like something." Mila didn't argue. That was the thing about her. She didn't spend words on people who'd already made up their minds. She'd learned early that pushing only made men like that dig in. They didn't listen harder. They listened less. So she did what she always did. She tucked the feeling away, kept her face flat, stayed quiet. As the Zodiac slipped off the bank and into the river, the team settled in. Boots braced, weapons tucked, eyes forward. Mila took a spot near the rear, shoulders loose, breathing slow. She watched the black water slide past, studied the tree reflections on the surface, looking for breaks in the pattern. Reflections tell the truth. Faces don't always. She counted the bends without looking down. 1, 2, 3. She listened to the motor. She listened to the night. She listened for anything that didn't belong. All the while, the men around her still treated her like paperwork stapled to a mission. They didn't see what she saw. Not yet. By the time the river narrowed and the Zodiac drifted into the shadow of the far bank, Mila knew one thing for certain. If the jungle were truly asleep, it wouldn't be this quiet. And if Havoc kept moving like nothing could touch them, they were about to learn, hard, the gap between confidence and carelessness. The Zodiac nudged forward, rubber hull whispering against the river's skin. But everything else about the movement felt wrong. Too much weight shifting, Too many small sounds piling up where silence should have lived. A metal buckle snapped. Someone cleared his throat again. A paddle kissed the side and wasn't corrected fast enough. Noise discipline was slipping, not all at once, but in fragments, the dangerous kind. Mila felt it before she could put a name to it. The way the river seemed to squeeze without actually narrowing. The way the jungle leaned closer, branches stretching over the water like hands that already knew where to grab. The motor cut and the Zodiac drifted. Boots hit mud. A breath of laughter whispered out, then vanished. Once off the water, they moved fast, too fast, the kind of speed driven by confidence instead of caution. Havoc pushed inland in a loose file, weapons up, eyes forward, trusting the plan to hold. Mila stayed at the rear, watching the river line instead of the backs ahead. She caught the uneven lap of water against the bank, the faint smear on the surface where fuel rode the current and pooled. Her chest tightened. She keyed the radio, voice steady. Ash to Havoc actual. Recommend pause. I'm seeing indicators along the river. Half a second of silence. Then Captain Owen Hale came back, clipped. Negative. Keep moving. We're on the clock. Mila slowed by a fraction. Just enough to think. She'd learned long before this night that the most dangerous lie isn't told to the enemy. It's told to your own command. She tapped the calm again. Ash moving to confirm, I'll catch up. It was a lie. Clean and controlled. The kind that sounded like discipline instead of defiance. She waited until the man ahead stepped over a fallen root, then slid sideways into the water, letting the river take her weight. Cold closed around her thighs, then her chest. She angled along the bank, moving slow, letting the current help instead of fighting it. On comms, she stayed silent. From the water, everything changed. Sound flattened, light fractured. The jungle stopped looking like chaos and started revealing structure. She lifted her thermal optic just enough to clear the surface, lens dry, breath slow. The truth hit all at once. Heat signatures bloomed. No scattered panic, no nervous prone shapes, spaced evenly, overlapping fields, an L-shaped pattern wrapping the exact ground Havoc was walking into. Then she saw the heavy weapon set back and slightly elevated, angled to rake both trail and riverbank in a single sweep, emplaced with patience, not chance. Her pulse didn't spike, it settled. This was the moment her training always led to, where seeing clearly mattered more than feeling anything at all. She keyed the radio again, urgency tight in her throat. Havoc actual, Ash. You're walking into a prepared kill zone. Repeat, this is deliberate. Heavy weapon covering. Static ripped through the transmission, words breaking apart. She tried again, new frequency, adjusted power. The jungle swallowed it. She raised the antenna for a heartbeat. Nothing. The radio crackled once and went dead. Not silence, dead weight, like a mouth that could no longer open. Her stomach dropped. Ahead of her, she could see Havoc still moving, still confident, still loud enough for men who were already waiting. She wanted to shout, wanted to fire a warning round, wanted anything that would make them stop. But she understood the math. One early shot wouldn't save them. It would only spring the trap faster, on worse terms. So she stayed in the water and let geometry do what it always does. The first flare ripped the night open into a white wound, hissing as it climbed before bursting overhead like a fake moon. Shadows vanished. The trail lit up. Every man was exposed. The heavy gun opened. Not a roar, but a long, tearing sound, like fabric ripping the world in two. Rounds chewed dirt, trees, bodies. The jungle detonated into noise. Men scattered, shouting. Someone went down hard. Another hauled him by the plate carrier until both vanished behind a fallen log. Smoke bloomed thick and red, but instead of hiding them, it marked them. Enemy fire shifted with it, tracking movement like it was guided. Formation collapsed into instinct. From the river, Mila saw it all with brutal clarity. Every step Havoc took followed lines the enemy had already drawn, cover that wasn't cover, dead ground that wasn't dead at all. She watched Captain Owen Hale try to rally them, voice sharp, orders forced through chaos. She saw a breacher spin and fall, a leg buckling the wrong way. She saw a man fire until his weapon clicked empty, then freeze a half-second too long before reloading. Seconds stacked up, and each one cost blood. What do you do when you see the trap and can't stop it? Obey and hope leadership finds a way out, or break formation and risk everything on your own judgment? Mila didn't ask herself. She already knew. She slipped under. The river swallowed her, black, cold, pressure squeezing her chest. She kicked slow, kept her silhouette low, let the current pull her along the bank. Roots brushed her shoulders. Something snagged her pack, and she froze until it slid free. Above her, gunfire cracked and echoed. She felt it through the water, each burst a dull thud against her ribs. She surfaced just long enough to breathe, then went under again, angling toward the rear of the ambush, toward the men who believed the river protected them. Her boot caught on something solid. One kick. Nothing. Another, still stuck. Panic clawed at the edge, sharp and sudden. She crushed it. Hands found the laces. She cut without looking. The boot came free and vanished into the dark. She didn't chase it. She drove forward, lungs burning, vision tightening, counting seconds the way she'd done 100 times before. When she surfaced again, it was behind the enemy line. 2 sentries watched the water, weapons low, certain nothing would rise from it. They never saw her. She took them clean, quiet, fast, no wasted motion. Their bodies slipped into the brush without a sound, while the heavy gun kept singing. An RPG launched, its backblast flaring bright. Mila turned toward it just as something else detonated, fuel stored too close. The blast rolled through the trees, heat washing out her thermal, flames skittering across the river's surface. Fire split the battlefield. For a heartbeat, she lost Havoc entirely. The heat drove her back into the water. She went under again, this time not by choice, but by need, swimming blind beneath burning debris as ash drifted down like black snow. When she surfaced on the far side, coughing, eyes stinging, she saw Havoc pulling back, pushed exactly where the enemy wanted them, toward the bend, toward the place with no cover and no room to move. She lifted her radio out of habit. Dead. Enemy fire slowed, then stopped, not because the fight was finished, but because they were done spending bullets. Movement replaced gunfire. Voices carried closer now, confident, almost casual. Mila pressed into the mud at the river's edge, water up to her chin, heart steady. Despite everything, she understood the shape of what was coming. Execution. She looked at the river, then the jungle, then the men she'd been attached to, but never fully accepted by. She unclipped her armor and let it slide away, felt suddenly lighter, exposed, faster. One last breath, and she let the river take her again, becoming just another dark shape below the surface. Action over permission, always. The river closed around her, thick, black, swallowing sound and light together. Down there, the world shrank to pressure and touch. She couldn't see her hands. She couldn't tell where water ended and roots began. She moved by feel alone. Cold slid into her sleeves and down her back. The current tugged at her gear, testing every strap and buckle. She kept low and flat, letting the river carry her instead of fighting it. Fighting burned oxygen. Panic burned more. Her breathing slowed, deliberate. Count in through the rebreather, out again. Time measured in heartbeats, not seconds. Roots reached from the bank like blind fingers. Some brushed her shoulders. Others caught and held. She eased around them, patient, refusing to rush even as her chest tightened. Then something grabbed hard. Her right boot locked beneath a thick root twisted by the current. One kick. Nothing. Another, harder, the root held. Pressure climbed in her head. Not fear yet, just urgency. She stopped herself, forced thought. Her hand slid down her leg, fingers numb, finding the laces by memory. Blade out. One clean cut. No sawing, no hesitation. The boot came free and vanished into the dark, pulled away like it had never been hers. She pushed on immediately, not looking back, not counting what she'd lost. Oxygen burned hotter now, a steady ache behind her eyes. She ignored it. When she surfaced again, it was slow and careful, just enough to clear her face. She didn't gasp. She didn't rush. She listened. Gunfire echoed farther off now. The main fight had shifted. That told her something. She lifted her optic just enough to scan. 2 heat signatures stood near the bank. Enemy sentries stood watching the water, relaxed. Their weapons hung low, angled toward where the team had been, not where she was now. They believed the river was empty. Mila studied them for a full breath, not because she needed the time, but because rushing made noise, and noise invited attention. She rose behind them like a shadow appearing at the wrong hour. The first dropped before he could turn. The second twitched. Half a step, a muscle firing, and then he was gone too. No spectacle, no wasted motion. The bodies were eased into the brush, placed so they wouldn't be seen unless someone searched hard. She checked their gear quickly. Radios, ammo, nothing unexpected, then looked past them. What she saw made her pause. The enemy line wasn't sloppy. No bunching, no random drift. Fighters were spaced with intent. Fields of fire overlapped cleanly. Men shifted on hand signals, not shouted commands. This wasn't a mob. It was a unit. She watched for a full minute, cataloging details the way she always did. A leader moved with confidence, not speed. Runners passed messages without breaking formation. A heavy weapon crew stayed covered, protected by 2 others who never strayed far. Leadership was shielded, by design, not luck. Her jaw tightened. Militia didn't move like this. She slid back into the water, repositioned, and surfaced farther down the bank. Again, she waited before acting. Again, the same discipline, the same control. This was command and control. Someone had planned it. Someone had rehearsed it. The ambush had layers, and the follow-on movement was just as deliberate as the first strike. She caught a signal, 2 fingers and a closed fist. Done clean. Textbook. Another man mirrored it instantly. That kind of fluency came from training and repetition, from leadership that enforced standards. A chill ran through her that had nothing to do with the water. She shifted again, keeping the river between herself and the enemy whenever possible. Her movement stayed smooth, economical, almost detached. To anyone watching, she would have looked like part of the place. Another shadow, another ripple. They didn't know her story, didn't know where she learned to move like this or why water felt more familiar than dry ground. They only saw the outcome. A soldier who didn't rush, didn't hesitate, didn't waste effort. Tracking the enemy's focus, she noticed something else. Attention kept bending toward one man. Orders flowed from him. The line adjusted around his movement. When he shifted, everything shifted. She didn't know his name, and she didn't need to. He was Command, and Command was too close to the river for comfort. She edged nearer, breath steady despite the burn. Her body ached now, the deep ache of pushing past limits and ignoring it. She acknowledged it and set it aside. One more detail settled heavy in her gut. The ambush felt personal, not emotional, not angry, personal in the way only careful preparation can be. Routes were covered, timing was perfect. Havoc's movement had been anticipated, not reacted to. Someone had known where they'd be. Someone had known. Mila stayed half submerged, eyes on the enemy line, her mind already working ahead. Whatever this was, it was bigger than a bad night, and if she didn't act soon, there'd be no one left to warn. The pressure on Havoc didn't ease, it narrowed. Rounds snapped closer now, not wild, not rushed, each burst forcing the team the same way, step by step, back toward the river they'd tried to leave. Mud grabbed boots. Branches ripped sleeves. Every man felt it, even if none said it aloud. They were being pushed. Captain Owen Hale shouted orders, but his voice no longer carried authority the way it had earlier. It carried urgency. He called for movement, for covering fire, for spacing that no longer existed. Men answered when they could. Short, sharp, saving breath the same way they saved ammo. Flick, click. Those sounds landed heavier than gunfire. A rifle went dry, and the man holding it froze for half a heartbeat before slamming in a new mag. Another fired short bursts, counting under his breath. Smoke drifted, then hung, turning the air thick and bitter. Morale didn't snap. It thinned, like fabric worn too long. Someone muttered they were almost empty. Someone else said they already were. No one laughed. Then the enemy fire slowed. Didn't stop clean, just enough to notice. The silence hit harder than the noise. Hale raised a hand for a halt that barely mattered anymore, straining to hear through the ringing. Around him, the team crouched low, weapons up, waiting for the next wave. It didn't come. From beneath the river's surface, Mila felt the shift before she heard it. Water carried sound differently. She caught the change in vibration, the swap from firing positions to movement. Boots in mud. Voices closer together. They were done spending bullets. They were about to rush. She hovered just below the surface, the waterline brushing her jaw, eyes barely breaking skin. Through her optic, she watched the enemy line tighten. Fighters moved closer, confidence settling into their posture. Weapons dipped, spacing collapsed. They believed it was over. Mila looked down at herself and decided without hesitation. Armor protected, but it also weighed. Waiting slowed her. Waiting made noise. Waiting pulled when she needed to move like the river itself. She unclipped and let it sink. The plate carrier slid from her shoulders and vanished into the black, bubbles marking its path for a heartbeat before disappearing. Cold pressed closer to her chest. She felt exposed, lighter, almost invisible. She adjusted her grip, checked the chamber by feel, and settled into stillness. Not hiding, waiting. Above her, the enemy began to move as a group, drawn to the widening riverbank by the thought of finishing everything at once. No more patience. No careful angles. This was the mistake she needed. She didn't rise right away. She waited until leadership stepped forward, until the man giving hand signals moved into the open. until the heavy weapon crew relaxed just enough to shift. Only then did she break the surface. No splash, just a controlled lift. Water streaming from her shoulders, rifle already aligned. She fired before anyone could shout. The first round took command. The second dropped the man reaching for a radio. The third caught the heavy gunner mid-turn. This wasn't panic fire. It was geometry, solved piece by piece. The suppressor erased direction. Shots sounded like they came from everywhere and nowhere. The enemy staggered, disoriented, trying to understand how death was coming from behind what they were certain was empty water. Mila kept moving as she fired. 2 steps, stop, fire, shift, fire again. Every shot was chosen, never rushed. She didn't chase bodies. She dismantled capability. Weapons first. An RPG gunner dropped before he could shoulder the tube. A rifleman let his weapon fall and tried to run, only to collapse a step later. Those who turned toward the river found nothing to aim at, just darkness and ripples. From cover, Havoc watched. At first, no one moved. They stayed pressed into the mud, eyes wide, trying to process what they were seeing. The girl they'd written off as gone stood waist-deep in the river, erasing the force that had just shattered them. No cheers, no shouted encouragement. It didn't feel like a win yet. It felt unreal. Enemy fire spiked for a brief second, wild, directionless, then collapsed completely. Men ran, some dove into brush, others froze, unsure which way to flee. Mila ended it quickly. When the last threat fell or vanished into the jungle, she didn't linger. She moved at once, reloading without looking, scanning the sectors that mattered. The riverbank went quiet. Only then did Havoc start breathing again. Captain Owen Hale was the first to rise, slow from cover, weapon still up, eyes fixed on the water. He looked at Mila like he was seeing her for the first time, not as an attachment, not as a problem, but as the reason his team was alive. She didn't wait for him to speak. "Security," she said, firm, level, carrying without strain. "Ridge, take the ridge. Texts, rear. Nobody stares at bodies." They moved. No questions. No hesitation. It happened without discussion, without anyone naming the shift. But it was real. For the first time that night, her orders were followed immediately. Mila climbed the bank, water streaming off her, one boot squelching unevenly now that the other was gone. She ignored it. She dropped beside a downed seal and checked his leg, hands already setting a tourniquet. "Stay with me," she said. Quiet, not dramatic, not comforting, just steady. He nodded, teeth clenched, trusting her without knowing why. Hale stepped closer and finally lowered his weapon. "I thought you were gone," he said. Mila didn't look up. She cinched the tourniquet tighter, watching the bleed slow. "I don't leave," she said. No pride, just fact. She stood and turned to him, eyes calm, posture squared despite the exhaustion pulling at her shoulders. "We're not done. This wasn't random. They knew where you'd be. They knew when." Hale swallowed and nodded once. The earlier arrogance was gone, burned away by reality. "What do you need?" he asked. Not surrender, recognition. Mila scanned the jungle again, already thinking 2 steps ahead. "Ammo count," she said quietly. "Then we move, and we don't go where they expect." Around them, the river flowed on as if nothing had happened. Darkness settled back into the spaces the flares had stolen. The jungle held its breath again. Havoc followed her lead without argument. Fear lingered. Relief did too. But something else had taken hold. Trust. Not because of rank or words, but because when it mattered, She rose from the river and turned the end into a beginning. The riverbank didn't become safe just because the shooting stopped. Mila didn't let it. "Security first," she said, already moving. "Nothing else matters." Her voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the fog. Ridge took the ridge without being told twice. Texts shifted rear security, eyes scanning the tree line like the fight could restart any second. The rest spread out, covering angles that actually mattered. Only then did Mila drop to her knees beside the wounded. She worked fast, not rushed, hands steady as she checked tourniquets, pressure dressings, breathing. She spoke to each man the same way. Short sentences, clear instructions, no false comfort. "You're stable, don't move. Look at me, not the jungle." The team fell into her rhythm without realizing it. Weapons stayed up, fingers stayed disciplined. No one wandered, no one panicked. Hale watched and didn't interfere. When the last casualty was set, Mila stood and wiped her hands on her pants. She looked toward the bodies near the river's edge, one in particular. "That one," she said, nodding at the man who'd been directing the enemy. "I want him checked." Boone moved with her, covering as she knelt. The man was cleanly dead. No surprise. Mila searched him the way she'd been taught. Fast, thorough, respectful. Inside the vest she found a folder, sealed in plastic, laminated like it mattered. She slid it free and opened it under the faint glow of a covered light. The first thing inside was a photo. Captain Owen Hale's breath caught before he knew why. It was him, clear, recent, shot from above. He stood near the river, helmet off, talking to someone just out of frame. The angle was wrong for chance. The clarity was wrong too. Beneath it lay a map. Their route was marked, timing notes written in careful block letters. A kill zone circled in red sat exactly where the ambush had blown open. No guessing, no improvisation. Mila closed the folder and stood. She crossed to Hale and handed it over without ceremony. He stared longer than he should have. His jaw tightened. The confidence he'd carried all night finally cracked. "This isn't," he began, then stopped. Mila shook her head once. "It's not coincidence," she said quietly. "They weren't waiting for Americans. They were waiting for you, for this team, for this route." The others drifted closer despite themselves. No one spoke. The jungle felt closer again, but for a different reason. They had spacing, leadership protection, follow-on movement. Mela continued. "That doesn't happen by luck. Someone upstream knew when you'd move and where." Hale swallowed. "You're saying we were compromised?" "I'm saying someone sold the ticket," she replied. No anger, no accusation, just fact. Silence stretched. Nobody argued. Nobody asked for proof beyond what was already in Hale's hands. Something shifted. Not loudly, not officially. Hale looked up at Mila, eyes tired and honest. "What do you recommend?" he asked, the first time all night he hadn't framed it as permission. Mila took the folder back, slipped it into her pouch, and scanned the jungle again. "We go quiet," she said. "No transmissions unless I say we change direction. And we stop thinking extraction is rescue. It's bait." No one challenged her. The chain of command didn't vanish. It adjusted to reality, and everyone felt it. Mila didn't talk about extraction like salvation. She treated it like a problem. "The bird will pull eyes," she said softly. "They'll watch every obvious path, every clearing, every place that looks like hope." Hale nodded without hesitation. He didn't look at the map anymore. He looked at her. "So we don't take it. So we don't walk where they're waiting," she answered. No one argued. No one offered an easier option. The teen moved like someone who'd stopped believing in shortcuts. They slowed. They quieted. Every step was placed. Every branch eased aside instead of snapped. Weapons stayed up, fingers disciplined. The jungle stopped feeling like something to rush through and became something to survive. They reached the ravine just as dawn thinned the dark, a narrow, ugly cut with limestone walls rising slick and steep, moss and roots everywhere. Sound traveled wrong there. Mistakes disappeared whole. Myla stopped them with a raised hand. "This is where they'll close," she said. "If they're tracking us, this is the funnel." Boone exhaled slowly. "No room to maneuver." "No," she agreed, "which means they won't expect resistance." Positions were taken without discussion. Ammo came out. Magazines were checked, then checked again. The count was bad, low, and Myla didn't soften it. "We don't have enough to fight fair," Myla said. "So we don't." Boone worked quietly with what he had, hands steady despite the pressure. He set a grenade into a fork in the rock overhead, wire pulled just tight enough to snag a rushing leg. It wasn't elegant. It was necessary. When he finished, they stepped back and looked at it. "One chance." Myla shook her head. "Too obvious." She moved forward into the open stretch of the ravine where the path widened just enough to be seen from above. She knelt there, rifle resting easy, posture loose like she belonged. Captain Owen Hale stiffened. "Ash," she cut in calmly. "They won't sprint into a ghost. They'll sprint into a person." No raised voice, no drama, just the math. If they slow down, they see the wire. If they sprint, they die. No one liked it. No one stopped her. She settled into stillness, breathing slow, eyes forward, the kind of stillness that doesn't come from fear, but from acceptance. Minutes stretched. The jungle returned to its small sounds. Insects, a distant bird, water sliding over stone. Then Myla felt it. Pressure. Not sound. Not movement. The sense of being watched through glass. She didn't shift or blink as a heat signature peeled away from the darkness above the ravine. One man, careful, patient, thermal raised, sweeping in measured arcs. A professional. He stopped when he saw her. Visible, unhidden, exactly where a tired, desperate soldier might collapse. He adjusted his stance and studied her longer than the others would have. He didn't rush. He didn't signal yet. The trap tightened. Behind Myla, the seals waited. Muscles locked, breaths held, fingers pressed to triggers they weren't allowed to pull. This was the longest moment of the night. Not gunfire. Not shouting. Waiting. Myla stayed kneeling, shoulders loose, rifle angled low. She didn't sell weakness. She let the truth sit there, a lone girl exposed at the end of a hard night. The point man decided. He lowered his optics slightly and signaled forward. Movement followed fast. Confident boots struck rock without slowing. More heat signatures piled into the mouth of the ravine, bunching exactly as Myla needed. The wire went tight. The blast was sharp and brief, contained by stone, a flash, a concussion. Bodies slammed into walls and each other. Before the echoes died, Myla was on her feet, rifle up, shots precise and limited. She didn't chase. She didn't dump magazines. She ended capability. The team moved instantly, like they'd trained their whole lives for this. Covering angles, watching overhead exits, trusting her timing completely. When it was over, the ravine went still again. Smoke drifted, then cleared. No one spoke for a long moment. They didn't look at her like a myth or an attachment. They looked at her like someone who'd been carrying this weight long before tonight. Hale finally lowered his weapon. His voice was quiet. "I've never seen someone wait like that." Mila checked the surroundings one last time and nodded once. "Waiting is part of it," she said. "Most people just don't practice." In the soft light creeping into the ravine, the team understood something they hadn't before. They hadn't been saved by luck. They hadn't survived on firepower. They'd survived on discipline, patience, and a 17-year-old girl who knew exactly when to move and when to stay perfectly still. The jungle didn't celebrate them. It simply went quiet again, like it had been waiting to see who would still be standing. No one chased the silence. No one rushed to speak. They stayed where they were, listening, letting it sink in that they were still alive. The betrayal didn't fade with the gunfire. It lingered, heavy and unanswered. A reminder that danger doesn't always look the way you expect. Mila said nothing about what she'd done. She didn't look back at the ravine. She didn't count bodies. She knelt near the path and broke her rifle down with steady hands. Mud wiped away, action checked, magazine seated. The same care she'd shown before the fight, she showed after. When she finished, she went back to the wounded. A quiet question here. A tourniquet tightened there. No speeches. No promises she couldn't keep. One man tried to thank her. She nodded once and moved on. Captain Owen Hale watched from a few steps back, not like an officer watching a subordinate, but like someone realizing how close confidence had come to killing them. He thought about the noise by the river, the jokes that had filled space where attention should have lived, the confidence that had slipped into carelessness. The jungle hadn't punished them for being brave. It had punished them for being loud. Mila finished with the last casualty and sat back on her heels. Her shoulders sagged just a little now that the work was done. Only then did the exhaustion show. She drank, wiped her face, and returned to stillness, the same quiet presence she'd carried from the start. Around her, the team moved differently now, quieter, more deliberate. Not from fear, but from learning. They'd learned that confidence without listening is just noise, that plans without humility become patterns the enemy can read, that the loudest voice is rarely the one saving lives. When it was time to move, Mela stood and stepped into place without announcement. She didn't walk point for recognition. She walked where she was needed. No one questioned it. Later, when this night was told in fragments, it wouldn't sound dramatic. No perfect lines. No heroic speeches. Just a simple truth every one of them carried out of that jungle. Courage isn't loud. It's precise. There are service members whose names never make headlines. They don't seek attention or expect applause. They move quietly through the hardest moments, do the work that keeps others alive, then fade back into the shadows when it's done. Their courage isn't built for stories. It's built for outcomes. This story is for them. For the quiet professionals who carry discipline when chaos takes over and humility when survival demands leadership. You've been listening to Old Bill's Tales. If stories like this matter to you, stories rooted in restraint, sacrifice, and respect, subscribe and keep them alive. Not for glory, but for understanding. And if you've served or know someone who has, this channel exists to honor that legacy properly. Because courage doesn't need an audience. It needs to be remembered.